All right, so I've been saving this for you for 2 months.
Oh,
I did some real recon on this because my team has a top 3 pick, and I've been really thinking about quarterbacks and what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of people have done work on this. Russillo updates his thing every year. It's a 50-50. It's probably even 45% now that you're going to hit on your top pick. I used to feel like it was 50-50. I actually feel like the odds are probably worse. Look, situation is 80% of this, where you could take somebody who may have been really good and he's just in the wrong spot and one thing leads to another and you just watch a guy's confidence get shattered. I'll never know if Mac Jones is going to be a good quarterback. He's sloppy with the ball. He wasn't a good athlete. But there was a scenario with a different team with a real offensive coordinator, with a QB coach, with a certain type of system where maybe he could have been Brock Purdy in the Niners. I don't know. There's other guys that just aren't going to happen. So I'm leaving situation out of this. I'm going to give you the 9 reasons why I think a quarterback will fail.
Oh, is this if he has one of the 9, he's done?
He can survive it.
Okay.
But when he fails, it's usually at least one of these things, maybe more, maybe 2, maybe 3. First one, not a leader, unpopular. The Bo Callahan theory. Who came to his birthday party? Nobody. I feel like this kind of nailed Carson Wentz a little bit.
Yeah, they lost the room. Like
you
Nick
saw
Foles
that
too
with
much,
the Eagles, right? Kind of lost the room.
Yeah.
It happens. It's a thing that happens.
Right. And it's that plus, which I imagine is also on your list, which is injury, right? He got hurt. And so like that plus losing the room is just, you lose your juice, you lose your momentum.
Yeah. So there's one. There's some Caleb Williams stuff that I think a lot of people have alluded to and talked about it. Just like, hey, the quarterback's supposed to be the coolest, most charismatic guy on your team. Can he be a leader? Can he be the coolest guy? Can he be the calming force? Or is he just like a little bit enigmatic? Can you be an enigmatic, awesome quarterback? There's some dialogue about it. Next one. Too sloppy. Sloppiness, I feel like, is the number one thing we overlook with quarterbacks. Like this was the Sam Darnold thing, right? You go back in college and you look at Sam Darnold, just super sloppy. And not just interceptions, but fumbles. Not being able to basically protect the ball. Darnold had 27 college games. He had 14 fumbles and 20 interceptions in the 27 college games. And there was like a lot of people were writing about this when it happened. There was some stats from 2007 and 2017. QBs with 8 fumbles or more in their final college season. The list was RG3, Jamarcus Russell, Curtis Ponder, Jake Locker, Blake Bortles, and Blaine Gabbert. Right? Yeah. It's like, well, that's not a good list. I don't want to be on that list. That's your final year. You had 8 fumbles. Well, Caleb had 8 fumbles last year. He did like 33 over 3 years. That makes me like a whiff nervous. The interception rate, it's a little tougher to figure out because sometimes guys are in offenses where it's like, hey, man, just take chances.
Yeah.
Just huck it downfield. But I think the combo of those, would you agree? Like if you're sloppy in college, you're probably going to be sloppy as a pro because these guys are faster. They're coming at you all. The coaches are better. Sloppiness, I feel like, carries.
Absolutely, yeah. My line is always quarterbacks don't change their stripes, right? Your play style is your play style. You can get a lot better or a lot worse within your play style. Like a lot of different play styles can be elite and a lot of different play styles can be really bad. But you are what you are. If you're a high turnover player, you're probably going to stay a high turnover player. If you're a high sack player, you're probably going to stay a high sack player. If you're a high throwaway player, check down player, you're probably going to stay a high throwaway check down player. Tiger doesn't change the stripes.
Next one. You're just too short.
Yes, agreed.
And we can fake this in a bunch of ways, but when you're too short, you're too short, and you have to be fucking fast, or you have to have just incredible poise the way Russ did. Yeah, right? Because Russ was probably too short, but Russ, for years, was a magician with the way he was able to move around the pocket and buy himself time. So you can be short if you can buy time.
Yeah, and the deep ball made it worth it too, right? Because when you're short, oftentimes you're losing the intermediate area of the field. It becomes really hard to throw to. So you lose some of those explosives that are created in the intermediate level of the field. Russ could pay you back on that with really, really good deep accuracy. And even like early Breeze, people always forget with Breeze, early Breeze, young Breeze was hucking that thing. Like he was shooting down the field. And then Breeze was also had preternatural vision and sense and feel, right? And that's where late stage Breeze, when he couldn't throw it down the field as much, was just like hitting windows the moment they opened, crystalline, perfect clarity between two linemen, like just like a gorgeous understanding of feel and space, maestro level stuff. And so that, right, like if you're going to be short, you better have some truly unique traits. And that's where like your Baker struggles, your Bryce Young struggles, and Kyler starts to become your pivot point, starts to become your inflection point. It's like, okay, when he's healthy, Kyler's got it sometimes and he can get around it. When Kyler's not healthy and he can't move as much, then you start to see the limits of the size.
It's a tough one because I still don't know where I stand on Bryce Young, but I know that he could not throw the ball over the middle of the field. And I don't know if that ever changed. So now it's got to be, you got to be moving around and you got to be hitting deep balls. Otherwise, you're not making it. Next one, not athletic enough. This is Mac Jones. Mac Jones was just not athletic enough. There's a world where you could have created a system that works, but ultimately, he just seemed like an inferior athlete in every football game he was in to the guys he was playing against. And at some point, defenses figured that out.
Yeah, that's the one that Jared Goff somehow survived. Goff endured. Goff is the last great just statue drafted first overall. We'll never see another one. He is the last of a dying breed. If he just sits back there and hopes the pocket stays cleaned up, and he's by this point he's crossed the Rubicon. Like he's good enough now that like he gets away with it. Early on, it was like, okay, Sean McVay's helping him. But Goff's always the guy to me where athletically, I watch him now and I go back and watch him at Cal and I'm like, how is this dude possibly surviving the NFL? But he's got it. That's the one he survived.
Yeah, Bledsoe had a little of that too, where he was just 6'6", and anytime he was running, limbs were just going everywhere, and eventually it came and got him. The Goff thing, a little bit of the situation with him, right, where he goes to McVay graduate school, and then goes to this Lions situation where it's like, hey man, anything you give us is a bonus. And then he gets a good offensive coordinator, he gets weapons, they build around him, and everything is kind of additive, positive, and somehow it worked out. But I think there's 9 other scenarios where he's out of the league already, right?
Yeah, and it's always with him and with Cousins. The thing that always stands out to me is they started for long enough in these systems that eventually they like got good. Like experience is so helpful. Once you start 70 and 75, 80 games, you round out your game. You know where your bread is butter. You know what you can get away with, what you can't, and they can actually start giving you more. Like Goff in the playoffs last year was playing big boy, grown up 101 quarterbacking and doing it well. Like that was for real stuff. And Goff wasn't capable of that the last time he made a playoff run with the Rams. And that's why they moved off of him. But eventually experience accumulates and you start to really, really sharpen and hone. You know what you're about. So Goff, like it was fun to take the Mickey out of Goff in the late 2010s, but now we kind of got to give him his due a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Next one is too raw. That's Trubisky and Lance. Just too raw. Didn't play enough games at quarterback and came into the league and things were too fast. And no matter what their athletic traits were, didn't have enough experience. They were the guys playing the video game that you just jump them from the rookie to the all Madden level and they just couldn't handle it.
So is it starting experience for you? That's kind of the solution? Because like people will talk about rawness as like a trait.
I don't know if it's starting
volume,
games in college or just not enough time playing the position or what it is.
Right. Because the name that immediately came to my mind was Anthony Richardson, right? Who obviously only started the one season at Florida last year. And we talked a lot about his rawness coming out. But for me, it was always like, all right, he's not raw. He's just inexperienced. Like you can see him, like to me, raw is always like, they don't know how to process. They don't know what they're supposed to be looking at. They get back there deer in headlights. They're confused. They're disoriented. They haven't started to like ingrain the instincts, right? The subconscious decisions that a quarterback needs to make at lightning speed. Richardson was always for me inexperienced, not raw. He was always like, okay, like I can see him making the choices. Yeah. It's just he just doesn't have enough time yet to like really get the plane off the ground. And I think you saw in his 4 starts with the Colts how that inexperienced but not raw, like he would make some mistakes, but he would also have some high caliber plays. So there's kind of raw is always a tough thing to categorize. Is basically what I'm getting at.
Where would you put Zach Wilson on that?
Yeah, so Wilson, I would not have described Wilson as raw. What I would describe Wilson as is coddled, and that's one that I'm kind of interested to see where you come out with the rest of your numbers. I'm always very cautious of quarterbacks who are playing at a lower level, we're playing with other NFLers, and we're just kind of playing on easy mode, right? Just running the game on normal mode, and they didn't have to deal with some of the challenges that you're going to see in the NFL. Thinking about Zach Wilson as being one of those guys. Thinking about Carson Wentz having that a little bit as well at North Dakota State. Just when these guys have really sweet environments in which to develop. I mean, Tua a little bit, but like obviously he's at Alabama, but still like when they're just playing with like all these top 10 picks, all these top 20 picks, sometimes it becomes hard to see the cracks in the facade because they're just protected. They're insulated by the guys around them.
Whereas Josh Allen, nobody believed in him, had to go to JUCO.
Yeah.
Still only got a couple scholarships. I've just got to win people over. What else can I do?
Yeah.
3 more. 4 more. Too erratic, too inaccurate.
Yeah.
Which is also Zach Wilson. Just like fundamentally just can't consistently throw the ball to the guys on his team. And that's a skill that I don't, other than Josh Allen and maybe 1 or 2 other examples over the last 25 years, usually doesn't get better from college to the pros.
So it's Trey Lance too. Trey Lance, Paxton Lynch. Like those guys just missed too many players. Yeah.
It's like, whoa, you're spraying around. Weak arm, Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
It's just like, your arm's not strong enough. Steve Walsh, who predates you weren't even born yet, but Steve Walsh was Dallas draft. I can't remember if Dallas drafted for him or traded for him, but he was one of those guys. Was Steve Walsh, winner, game manager, and then he just got to the pros, and you could time his throws of the sundial. But weak arm, I think, killed Josh Rosen, also who was also not athletic enough.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett I put up there with weak arm as well, where Pickett just doesn't access enough of the field to scare me. He can he throws a 9 ball and it's short every time, and I'm just like, all right, like I can stop this guy. Not worried about it.
2 more. 2 one-dimensional. I think this is the Justin Fields problem that a couple teams exposed last year, like the Browns in that one Justin Fields game, where they were like, oh, you can only do this, so we're going to make you do this instead. And there was no plan B. We'll see if he can shed that one. You were a bigger Justin Fields fan than others, but to me, it's like, oh, he succeeds in this one type of game, but can he succeed in multiple types of games? I am not
and that's
convinced.
The thing is, like, I agree with you. And the one dimensionality makes it impossible for the Bears to keep him for a year overtaking Caleb Williams. But whenever it came to, hey, Sam Howell's going for a 3rd, Kenny Pickett's going for a 4th, it was like, all right, like Justin Fields might be one-dimensional, but that one dimension is pretty good. All right,
yeah.
4.4 240. Yeah, like,
right.
We like that at 4.4 230 at quarterback. Like that is a rare thing to have. And so the thing about Fields that it interests me for the second stage of his career as a QB2, as a spot QB1, is just his dimension. Like if Gardner Minshew's one dimension is like, I'm accurate, and Justin Fields' one dimension is like, I can outrun everyone on defense. I'm just a little bit more interested in the Justin Fields dimension. Yeah.
Last one you mentioned, coddled, uncoachable, not a hard worker. That's basically the Jamarcus Russell, the famous story about they gave him the DVD with the plays and they put something in it, and whatever that story was, or it never fell out. Those are some guys too, where they're just like they just don't want to put the time in. So if we're going backwards and we're not counting wrong situation and we're not counting injury, not a leader, unpopular, too sloppy, too short, not athletic enough, too raw, too erratic, inaccurate, weak arm, too one-dimensional, uncoachable / coddled / not a hard worker. And then you look at all the guys we're staring at right now. And we already talked about Caleb. If I give you those 9 things, what worries you with Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, I would say one-dimensional, right? Because he is really like a one read and scramble guy. Like he does not want to sit there, go through his reads and kind of get to a check down. Like I would say the dimensionality of it worries me. The we didn't really say like late breakout, kind of talked about a little bit being too coddled, but just he kind of had a Kenny Pickett career arc where he started for 4 seasons, never really moved the needle as an NFL guy. And then all of a sudden his 5th season when he was older and the environment around him had 2 top 20 picks, I should say, at wide receiver. His left tackle might be the first dude off the board next year. Like they just had NFLers across the field. He all of a sudden looks really, really good. And so environment and kind of the coddled nature that he got there, I think that red flags for me. And then he's not too short. He's a little bit slight. And I think that body armor.
A little bit slight. He's allegedly weighed 210, which to me means he's 205.
He is extremely slight. It's funny when you go and you try to find athletic comps for him in terms of his height, weight, right? He's one of the best comps for him is Tom Brady, because he's like 6'5", or he's like 6'4", 205, which is also Brady's size at the combine. It's just very funny that Jaden and Brady cannot possibly be more different in terms of how they play the position. So yes, like I think those are your red flags for Daniels. For May,
well, but just because we haven't talked about him on this pod, like the age piece. I guess that's another way a QB can fail. I don't know how to figure out how to put that in, but trying to compare somebody like May, who's 21, and Daniels, who's, a year and a half older, who spent half a decade in college. And as you mentioned, in his 5th year, ended up in the best possible situation. I don't know how to evaluate that.
And
Because a year ago, you wouldn't have put him in the top 3.
Right. And I said, I was talking out the side of my mouth. I said, Jared Goff gets all this experience. He's good now. And you say, well, okay, well, Ben, like Jaden Daniels got all this experience. Like, isn't it true that he could improve and develop? And the answer is yes. Like the same is true of like Bo Nix, who absolutely got better at Oregon than he was at Auburn over his 5 years. Michael Penix at Washington got better than he did over his time in college as well. I want to draft the quarterback before he develops. I don't want to draft the final product. I don't want, okay, this is what Jaden Daniels' final product is. It's scrambling all over the place. It's tucking and running. It's not going through his reads. It's not throwing in the middle of the field. Like I agree that he's gotten better, and it's okay to get better over time and get all these reps, all this opportunity. But if this is closer to your ceiling than Drake May is or JJ McCarthy is, I'd rather go that direction because I believe in my coaching staff. I believe in my ability to foster development in quarterbacks. Of course, I need to actually have that, right? I need to have that present in my building. And, some teams don't have the wide receivers, the offensive line, and the coaching staff necessary to do so.
Well, and then you think like Drake May, all right, let's say he stays another year in college, and then in his 5th year goes to a team like LSU had. Would he have been really good? I'm going to say yes.
And this is also Justin Herbert theorem as well a little bit, because remember, Justin Herbert went back to school because he was a giant geek who cared about getting his degree, right? He was a bit, but for the league, it was like, oh no, he went back as a senior, and then he played better that year than he did as a junior, in my opinion. Like I liked him more coming off a senior year than he did off his junior year. But the league had already decided, like, oh, he's too old, and why did he go back? And like he should have dominated, and he didn't like win the Heisman. And so there's always like the narrative arcs can get convoluted at this thing.
I also like that Drake May stayed at North Carolina when he easily could have left because you knew the team wasn't going to be as good. He could have just jumped to some other program, tried to win the Heisman, tried to have an awesome season, position himself as the number 1 pick. And I don't even think he even considered it. He's like, I'm North Carolina. My dad went here.
Yeah.
My brother went here. This is where I'm staying. And if we're not as good this year, so be it. These are my guys. Which I think matters.
Yeah. And my number 1 takeaway from charting this year, where like I watched all the games from the senior seasons, was just how bad UNC's supporting cast was. Like I think people know the name Tez Walker because he had his dispute with the NCAA, and he's certainly an NFL receiver. He's a middle round guy, and I think he might be the only NFLer on that team. The tight end might be like a late round guy when the day comes. Beyond that, I mean, like this offensive line was really for a college line like dramatically below average, and they didn't have schematic solutions to help them in protection. Like May was throwing on the Superman cape every Saturday.
And his OC had left from the year before, right?
Yes, Phil Longo left. Was replaced. I can't remember the name of the new OC. But so they're right. They had a massive switch overall. They lost talent, and May's just like dying back there to beat Georgia Tech. Like it was not a good situation for him.
So would you say for him, too erratic and accurate would be the way that he fails?
Yes, I think too erratic and inaccurate. Like I think that a proxy for kind of too erratic, a little bit too sloppy, I think is maybe a better one for
sloppy.
May.
Oh yeah, it's too sloppy is even better. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because May is so aggressive, right? May.
Well, you called him a big game hunter, which I loved. He's just always going to take the 50-yarder over the 20-yarder.
May loves to just be like, what if I won the game on one play? And he'll do that first quarter, 8 minutes left, 2nd and 3. And you're like, dude, there's a lot of game left. Like you gotta chill out. There's nothing May loves more than identifying a blitz and saying, okay, well, my hot read's over there. But really, like if I wait for a second and the post gets over, like he just loves opportunity. If you're gonna let a little bit more space develop for him, he's gonna try to kill you for it. And so he is very aggressive. I think I don't think he's in the red with aggression where you're just like, okay, this guy's reckless. Like he's never going to fix this. Jameis Winston, he's going to have 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. Like we're not going to be able to field an offense here. I think he's more in the yellow where it's like, okay, like we can get away with this, but we probably need to calibrate you back. But I think the sloppiness is more the red flag than the erraticness, because a lot of his accuracy issues are a product of the fact that he's attempting 28-yard throws into the sideline into a tight window, right? Where it's like, okay, like, yes, this wasn't the most accurate pass, but also it's because like only the most precise pass could have possibly been caught in this context. Yeah. If he was just throwing Bo Nix checkdowns the whole game, he'd look really accurate.
Well, he'll get used to that in the Patriots next year.
Yeah.
Receivers that aren't open, trying to squeeze things in. Just before we go, JJ McCarthy, what would you say if he failed out of those 9 things I gave you? What would be the reason? Oh, so kind of like JJ. Jesus,
I do. I think if you were making me commit my franchise to a guy and I had to pick between JJ and Jaden, honestly, like the closer we get, the more I feel like I'm like, man, I think I would do JJ. I think I would. I think McCarthy, I think the rawness is there. I do think that you just have so little data. You have a small sample size for what he was in college, especially like in the context of like people say like, oh, like if you look at his numbers on third down, they were good. And like, oh, when he was trailing in fourth quarter, they were good. Yes, but he never entered a game under the conditions that Caleb and Drake entered it, where they were like, or even Jaden, where it's like, hey, like, if I'm not the best player on the field for 4 quarters, we're going to lose. Like McCarthy never had just the size of the weight on his back that these other quarterbacks did. Even when they were against Ohio State, a key game, it's still just like, hey, like I know the way our team works, and I get to defray some of the responsibility to other players, right? And so it's just, I still think that sensation is very real. And so to me, like the rawness is there for JJ. I thought, honestly, he was going to be a little bit more slight talking about the Jaden Daniels issue. He came into the combine quite heavy. I don't know how real that number is. So I have a little bit of size concerns, a little bit of arm talent concerns as well. Where I think that McCarthy has a fine arm, but if you watch him try to throw outside of the numbers, you really see he has to put like both cheeks into every single throw, and there's big accuracy drains accordingly. And so he really feels to me like a Brock Purdy type of player, where it's just like, hey, like, give him the super friends and he'll get the offense off the ground. But like, once, you kind of make him having to try to, carry extra of the load, like he's going to start making mistakes for you. He'll black out and throw it right at a linebacker sometimes. He won't be able to hit a guy open against the sideline sometimes. He's just a little bit limited. So it's not a high ceiling guy, but I do like a JJ McCarthy.
And he's young. I like that he's young.
Yep.
I want the Patriots to draft Drake May. He checks the most boxes for me. I love the fact that he'll probably end up being 240, 245 pounds. There's some Josh. Anytime somebody's being described as there's some Josh Allen and some Justin Herbert there, I'm in. Yeah. I like all the leadership stuff. And I've said this before, but I love that he was like the little brother, just getting the crap kicked out of him by the bigger brothers, all of whom were good athletes. Tough kid, loyal. Like there's just, I get it. None of this is a sure thing, but to me, it's like he's an 80-20 bet that he makes it.
Yeah. My expectation is that if it goes 1 Caleb, 2 Jaden, my bet would be on Drake. Drake may be the 3rd overall pick. That's my expectation for how the Patriots would behave in that context. Or what are you rooting for if Drake is 2?
I mean, I'd have to talk myself into Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy really quickly, right?
Yeah.
I guess the case for Jaden Daniels is, could he be one of the best 10 players at his position?
Yes.
And it's like ceiling wise, he could.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if JJ McCarthy will ever be one of the 10 best players. With JJ McCarthy, it's more like, can he be Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
Is a different question. I think May and Daniels, some people think May, no way he could be a top 10 guy at his position. I disagree.
Yeah, I think May can be. I also think Daniels can be. Daniels is tricky because I'm a huge quarterback mobility guy. I've been talking about it for years. It's so great. One of my big things is that quarterback mobility, when you have a guy who can really run, he's not just high ceiling, he's also high floor. Because the running, the scrambling, it takes away sacks, right? It takes away throwaways. It gets you to 2nd and 6 instead of 2nd and 17 and 2nd and 10. Like that's the value. But Daniels takes a lot of sacks and he makes bad decisions under pressure. He freaks out in clean pockets. He doesn't give you the typical high floorness that a lot of these mobile quarterbacks do. May, as a counterpoint, like May is a good mover, and May does a lot to eliminate sacks and to get positive scrambles. Like he has it the right way. Jaden is just so high. Yeah, Jaden is just so high variance with some of it, and so Jaden is really, truly, like I don't like to say this because I think it gets used way too often. Like I didn't say this of Anthony Richardson at the time, and I didn't say this of Josh Allen at the time, and I was wrong on Allen. But like when people say, "Oh, he's high ceiling, low floor," I oftentimes think that's like a too big of an oversimplification. With Jaden, man. He is really high ceiling. He's really low floor. There's no two ways around it. He has a roll of the dice and hold your breath.
Well, I already have Kristaps Porzingis in my life, so to have my quarterback also be a hold your breath guy. Yeah. Some of those hits he took in the LSU was, especially in that Alabama game, just that one alone, he took like 3 monster hits.
If they take Jaden at 3, you go youtube.com, you type in Jaden Daniels versus Florida 2023. You watch that, you don't watch anything else. And that's the greatest player I've ever seen. You're fine.
Well, if they took whatever, May or Daniels at 3, they get a receiver or a tackle at 35, and then they just throw darts to fill the other positions. I think their defense is going to be good. I'm actually kind of excited to see.
I agree.